إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Dear brothers, today I would like to talk to you about the topic that we need to keep in mind when when Islam comes up in our lives, with our families, with our friends, at work. Why Islam? There are many people that ask that question. Why Islam? And there are many answers. And today I would like to give my 2 cents worth to add to those answers. Why Islam? If you ask yourself why you're a Muslim, most people will say, I'm Muslim because I want to go to Jannah or to heaven. And indeed, that's why we are Muslims. But there's another aspect to that question. There's another perspective to that question that needs to be asked and understood. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be Muslims. We know why we want to be Muslims, but why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be Muslims? And today I'm going to talk to you about that. Today I'm going to talk to you about what Islam has to offer us in this life, before the next. The next life is the reward. The next life is the prize. But there is a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be Muslims in this life. He knows who's going to do good and who's going to do bad. He could have created those who deserve Jannah in Jannah and those who deserve the punishment in punishment, but He didn't. He created us in this life so He can test us. But it's not a random test. There is a purpose, and today I'm going to talk about that purpose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create the men and the jinn except so they can be servients. They worship, they submit. And today I'm going to talk to you about the general meaning, the broad meaning of what word ya'budun means. You see, everything in life, everything that is around you has a program that is following. You know, the plants, the crops, the sun, the earth, the galaxies, the atoms, everything is following a program that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put. The laws of nature, all of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, and everything follows through. There is one element who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to give free will to. Choice, and that is you and me and everyone who's alive. Even then, it's a very limited free will. It's not a big free will, but He chose to give us free will. So everything in life is following that program. And when everything follows that program, that why Allah created the things they are the way they are, that is called salah. That is productivity. Imagine if the crops one year decide to not come out. They don't want to come out. What would happen to life? A lot of corruption. Imagine if the animals decide to rebel, or the laws of nature decided to move in a way or function in a way that is different than what we expect and what we build our life to. All of that is corruption. That doesn't happen, obviously. But mankind has the choice. You can either follow the pathway of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that brings productivity, progress, goodness into this world. That is a salah. Or you follow a different pathway, and that is fasad. Fasad fil ard. That free will gives you the ability to do either salah or fasad. When your actions are complementary or following the pathway of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are producing salah. They are producing goodness in this earth. And when your actions are not, they are producing fasad. They are producing corruption in this earth. So where is the role of Islam in all of this? The role of Islam in all of this is to guide us into the role of salah. And today I'm going to talk to you about this. Here, in this life, productivity and progress and goodness in this life before the reward and the prize that is hereafter. You see, in order to have progress, you have to preserve your capital. You have to preserve those elements that you have in life and protect them, that will create this progress and this salah. And Islam is all about protecting that. There is a lot of do's and don'ts in Sharia. Do this, do this, do this. Don't do this. Stay away from this. So when you put it all together, a big picture starts to emerge. And by the time of the 7th century, scholars have started to realize that big picture. It took a while. That was not realized overnight. But people gradually started saying, oh, there is a common theme to Sharia. There is a common theme. And this is the theme I'm going to talk to you about today. Eventually, one person brought it up together. It was not only his work. He definitely built on others. But he's credited to be the first one to bring this concept into our collective consciousness. He was called Imam Shatibi, and he lived in Andalus, or Spain now. And that was around the 7th century. And he wrote a book about it. And he said, and the book was about المقاصد al-Sharia, or the general theme. Why? Why Islam? He answered why Islam in regards to this life. If you go through the city, if you go through the streets, coming through here, you probably hit one or multiple traffic lights. And hopefully you stop at the red traffic light, and you slow down at the yellow, and you pass at the red. Maybe even along the traffic, you might have hit a stop sign. So there are do's and don'ts when you are driving around the city. Well, why? Why is there do's and don'ts when you're traveling around the city? So everybody can get to where they need to get safely and as efficient as possible. So things can move forward. Imagine a city without traffic lights. Chaos will happen. Fasad. The opposite of productivity, the opposite of goodness. Well, Islam, there are traffic lights too. There's actually 6 colors, not 3. There's the do's, the absolute do's. I want to call that bright green. You have to do this. Al-wajib, or al-fard, depending on which school you follow. And there's something a little bit less than that. Call it light green. Al-mandub, something that is recommended, something that is suggested. And then there is the haram, red. Don't come in. If you go on the highway from where cars are coming out of the highway, you see a sign saying, wrong way. There's also wrong way in Islam. Bright red, wrong way, do not come in. There's something a little, that's haram. There's something a little bit less than that. Something that is discouraged. Makruh. Yellow or light red, whatever you want it. And then there's something that is mubah. Allowed. You can consider that white. And there's a 6th color that general people don't talk about or don't realize it is. There's a maskut anhu. There's something that is just ignored. Nobody has talked about. You can assign that as 6th color. But nonetheless, there are colors. And if you survey all these do's and don'ts in all their grades, in all their categories, you would start to realize, like the scholars of the 6th and 7th century started to realize, that there is a general theme. They all revolve around protecting basic elements that are needed for society's progress. The pathway of Allah, the pathway of progress, the pathway of productivity, the pathway of goodness, the pathway of salah needs elements, and those elements need to be protected. And yes, indeed, they do need to protect it. They found that the Sharia revolves around 5 pillars. Pillar number 1, protecting the faith, protecting the religion. Pillar number 2, protecting the nafs, protecting the body. Pillar number 3, protecting the mind. Al-aql, the deen, al-nafs, al-aql. Pillar number 4, protecting the generations, the children. Pillar number 5, protecting the wealth, al-nasl wal-mal. So the scholar, along with many others, they built this theory around those 5. Of course, it was a very valued human effort. And they saw that these do's and don'ts in Sharia, when you survey them, They all revolve around those 5 basic pillars. But not only that, they revolve around protecting those 5 basic pillars in eccentric circles. Meaning, there are do's and don'ts that protect the most essentials of those 5 basic pillars. Like, don't kill, for example. That's to protect life. Don't drink alcohol. That's to protect the mind. Don't commit zina. That's to protect the generations. And so forth. They protect the core. The first layer of those do's and don'ts, they protect the core elements of those 5 pillars. And there's another shell of protection after that. So the first one is called daruriyat, the necessities. The next layer of protection of those Islam instructions, hajiyat. Depending on how you want to make the translation, maybe the first one is called the absolute or the necessity. Next one is the needed. Do's and don'ts that protect those elements that lead to protecting that is most preserved. For example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, He's not just talking about zina. He's talking about وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Do not even approach it. There is the act of zina itself, and there is approaching, there is walking on the pathway of zina. That walking is also prohibited. Why? Because it leads to that. And so forth. And you see that in Sharia. So that second layer of protection is around protecting things that will have some kind of relationship in protecting the core. It's not an absolute, it's maybe one step away. What is another example of this in relation to the pillar of faith? The sunnah in the salah. The sunnah in the salah. Well, there's a farad. There's 5 farads during the day, and there's a bunch of sunnah. And people in the United States, for some reason, generally, they don't pray sunnah, or it decays. After a while, you see them every time they come, they start praying sunnah, and they don't pray sunnah anymore. Well, why do you think sunnah is there? Sunnah is there to protect the farad. To protect the farad. And then there is a third layer of instructions, even adding more and more protection. It's called al-kamaliyat, the complementaries. There are instructions about maybe minor or trivial issues. Do this and don't do that. They don't necessarily are connected to the core of those pillars, but they are connected to the layer before that. So, in principle, those do's and don'ts, they are revolving around protecting those 5 basic pillars. So what do? You do them. Simple as that. Yes, sunnah is not like farad. Yes. If you drop an instruction, or if you don't follow an instruction from layer number 3, is not like not following instruction from layer number 1 or 2. Yes, you do that. Yes. But if you drop the whole category of tahsiniyat, the whole 3rd category altogether, what are you doing? Well, you're exposing the category after that. If you drop the whole category of hajiyat, you're exposing the daruriyat. You're exposing the first one. You're putting it at risk. Tahajjud is sunnah. Farad is subh. If you never think about tahajjud at all, you will, inshallah, you'll wake up for the fajr. You will do it. But maybe, once in a while, you're not going to be able to make it on time. Maybe most of your fajr prayers are 5 minutes before the sunrise. If you think about tahajjud, all of a sudden, it gets better. You may do tahajjud itself. You may do it or not do it or partially do it. But the fajr prayer all of a sudden becomes a lot more consistent. The timing of it also is not going to be the last 5 minutes of the before the sunrise also. That is the way it is. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make Islam like this for us? Well, because it's human nature. If you shoot for 70%, you will get 50%, 60%. If you're really lucky, you'll get 69%, 70%, but that is not consistent. If you shoot for 90%, you will get the 70% consistently. So those are the instructions. Those are the traffic lights. Now, sometimes you may understand why Islam is asking you to do something the way you're supposed to be doing it. And that's great. If you know that that intersection is dangerous and you have to stop at a stop sign there or yield or proceed with caution and all of that, that's great. But sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you're too busy with life or you don't have time. Then what do? Well, I'm going to ask the question in another way. Let's say you're going back home at 11 o'clock at night and you stop at a traffic light and it's red and there's absolutely nobody in the streets. Absolutely nobody. No other cars. Do you wait till the traffic light turns green or do you just go on red? Well, I hope you say you wait till the traffic light goes green. And that's the other analogy. If you don't know, you still submit to the pathway of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You believe that pathway is the pathway of productivity, of goodness, of salah in this life, and the reward of the hereafter. Those who don't cross that traffic light at 11 o'clock p.m., do you know why they don't cross that traffic light at 11 o'clock p.m.? Because they respect the law. They respect the law, even if the policeman wasn't there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. Those who respect or fear the status of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those instructions are given from your Lord. They are given to you for your benefit, for your progress, for your protection, to protect you and the elements of your life. And if you follow that pathway, you create salah in this earth. If you don't follow that pathway, you create corruption. You have free will. Maybe on the Day of Judgment you wish you didn't have it. But that's the way it is. You have it. And you're going to be rewarded or punished. So, when we take all of these instructions, we put them all together, this is the big picture that starts to come up. And when you understand that big picture, all of a sudden you think, wow, Islam is there to protect me. Islam is there to protect my money, my children, even if they haven't come yet. Islam is there to protect my life, my mind, my body, my faith. Actually, Islam is there to protect all of these things for you, even from yourself. Islam is there to protect that even from yourself, from your own transgressions against yourself before the transgressions of others against you. Islam is there to organize the relationships between us in society in a productive way. I could talk to you about what is these topics are not floating out there. These topics are actually subject of study. And the science that studies human relationships is the science of behavioral science. It's called behavioral science. And you could look into it and you could look at categories of people and look how they live and what kind of dysfunctions and hardships they follow in this life. The single parent families, for example. It is out there. It is a subject of study. When Islam says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, He's not just trying to restrict you, and make your life difficult, and no, there is a purpose, there is a reason. You may want to you may be in a hurry and you want to cross that traffic light. Maybe waiting for the traffic light to turn green, or you're following the rules, maybe in that instance is going to be bad for you. But guess what? If you don't follow the rules, you may walk there and boom, a semi comes by and you're done. It happens. So you have to follow the rules. And it's even better if you understand why the rules they are the way they are. Because that way you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in action and in heart. If you submit in action and in heart, that is called ibadah. Then you are what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked you to be. He created you so you can do what? إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Ya'budun is not just about doing your prayers and fasting. And Ya'budun is about everything in life. Ya'budun is about submitting to His pathway and doing it the way He wants to do. And then, when you take all of that, and you look at it, Islam, there is another concept that you should keep in mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about this life that this life is kabad. He called it kabad. Kabad means hardship. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. He called this life hardship, and he called the life after al-hayawan, the real life. The real life. This life is hardship. So everything we do here has hardship to it. It's a fact of life. When you are following the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are exerting some hardship while you are following the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like when you're following any other rules. There's an element of hardship. That hardship is ordinary hardship. And that is a key point when it comes to Islam and Sharia. It's ordinary hardship. When it becomes extraordinary hardship, what does Islam do? It breaks it. It breaks it. Gives you rukhsah. The alternative is called azima. You do it the way it's supposed to be done. If it's associated with extraordinary hardship, that's called rukhsah. If you are traveling, you can break your fast, or you can combine the salah, and so. And that is the way of Islam. So the hardship itself, although it's a fact of life, it is not the goal. The hardship is not the goal. The goal is with the change that is going to become in you as you are following the pathway of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you are changing to become a better person. The hardship is not the thirst and the hunger during the fasting of Ramadan. That's definitely a hardship, but that is not why we fast. We fast so we can reach the goal of taqwa. When that thirst and the hunger becomes extraordinary hardship, Islam tells you break your fast, pay sadaqah, or make it up at some other time. So the Sharia, while it's organizing our lives, the pathway of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while it's organizing our lives, it keeps in mind that it's organizing our lives with an ordinary hardship, because that is what's going to last in the long run. You know, some schools focus really too much on the hardship itself, and they forget the goal, and they forget that Islam is not about the hardship itself. For example, some of the Sufi schools, but they you know, we have to understand, we have to realize, we have to keep it in mind that is not the goal. The goal is actually the change that is going to come from doing that. And when collectively, all those 5 categories, in each of its 3 degrees, collectively, that is called al-maslaha. Maslaha. And maslaha by itself, that grand structure, that superstructure of Sharia, that by itself becomes another element of ijtihad. There are several forms of ijtihad, mainly 2 main categories. Not only 2, but 2 main categories. When these instructions, where do they come? They come from evidence. These instructions, the do's and don'ts, they come from evidence. And that evidence is textual evidence. And when you try to build on that textual evidence, something that looks like that textual evidence, in similar circumstances, for example, that's one form of ijtihad, it's called qiyas. The other form of ijtihad stems from the maslahah itself. You know, the recommendations, the do's and don'ts, they are falling in predefined categories and structures. So how does that help us? Well, it helps us, you know, texts are finite, circumstances of life are infinite. And as we go through the centuries, from one century to the next, and new situations, and in new circumstances, and new obstacles face us, well, people say, they always say, well, what am I supposed to do as Muslim to that particular issue or this particular issue? Well, the answer is, that is Sharia. That is the maslahah. It has to follow the same pathway. Yes, the details may differ, but you better come up with something that protects life, that protects the mind, that protects the wealth, that protects the generations, and that protects the faith. If some scholar comes up with or somebody comes up with a fatwa that is totally out there, an outlier to all of this, you can tell them, hey, hold on, buddy. You know, this has nothing to connect with the entire theme of Islam. It's not about just random things here and there. There is a structure. There is a purpose. And when we understand that purpose, that helps us go through this life. That helps us, first of all, accept this. And I'm not telling you here to accept anything that is told for you. Whoever tells you anything, that Islam is this, or Islam says you should do this, or the do is this, or the don't is this, you should ask, what is your evidence? If it's something that is ambiguous, if it's something that is obvious, it's obvious, If it's something that you know since you were a little kid, then that's a different story. But it's something, ambiguous, new, whatever, then you should ask. I'm not telling you just to follow blindly. You should ask, what's your evidence? But you should submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know that He wants what is good for you in this life. He's going to reward it. He wants what's good for you here and now, and He's going to reward you on it in the hereafter. And that's why He created you. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. Dear brothers, the summary of what I was talking about, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in this earth, and He wants us to follow His path. And His path is constructed with instructions and do's and don'ts. And those instructions, the do's and don'ts, they are here to protect us. They are to protect 5 main pillars. And those 5 main pillars, when we follow them and we protect them, when we understand them, we understand Islam, when we understand the big picture of Islam. And inshallah, this will help us become more lenient. Help us to love Islam. Help us to love those instructions. Help us to come to it with submission, the way it is supposed to be, not to come, with inconvenience. And help us, inshallah, to become better Muslims. اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معاصيك